All right. So first thing, I'm going to go through the simple process of just double checking, what's what, make sure everything looks good. So our title sequence should be completely black at the beginning, nothing's there. Something happens to the screen, and then at the very end it goes away. Okay, that's how our title sequence needs to work. As we put this on top of pieces, we need to have that so that nothing jumps. Okay, like if I were to stop it here, and then I had an animation starting right away, that would look weird, how it just jumps from one piece to the other. So it does that, so everything's good. My motion blurs are on. I have my motion blur button set. I can see the motion blur as things are moving in and out. Yep, right there. You can see how it's kind of fuzzy. So now I'm going to make it into an actual movie. So on Mac computers, there's another way you can do it, but on a PC we have to do it this way. So we're going to go to Export, Add to Media Encoder. Now what this does is it opens up a separate program called Adobe Media Encoder. That software is free with your Adobe subscription, so if you do have the Adobe Cloud, you would also get this. On these computers, it takes probably 3 minutes or so for it to open. So if you click the button, just wait, okay? It takes a little bit for them to open up, and then what's going to happen is it's going to create a link between our program, or our video and After Effects and Media Encoder. So that might take another 30 seconds or so. So just be patient. We should see the screen pop up and then our title project happen over there on the right side, which you'll see obviously. All of the stuff that if you've ever used Premiere, After Effects, and Media Encoder work very well together, as do Photoshop and Illustrator. You can actually grab stuff and send it to Photoshop and grab stuff and bring it to Illustrator and so on. All right, so this is the basic interface that shows up. This area here is where you should be waiting for your stuff to show up. If you click it 17 times, you will get 17 title card things that show up right there. Not a huge deal, you just delete the ones you don't want. Click it, hit delete. All we have to do is verify it's on H.264, which it is. And then we have to give it a name. So I'm going to put this inside of my title card output. I'm going to call it Sarcona _ title card. And because I already have one there, I'll just put 002. And then you hit play. And then what this does, it links back to After Effects, makes the movie, and it's done. Okay? You always want to check your movie after it's out, just to make sure you didn't accidentally set something wrong. There, it's done. That's how quick it is. If I'm in After Effects and I set my work area to just that, that's all it's going to render out is just that area, okay? So make sure you have the entire work area set up. I'm going to go into my folder, which is P drive 1900 morning, nope, title card, I'll put it in my other folder then, my night folder. There it is. And then I'll double click it. These computers are set up with VLC. Has anyone not heard of VLC before? Okay, so VLC is the world's greatest movie player. If you download pretty much any movie file, VLC will play it. It also plays audio files. It also plays image sequences. It's like an all-in-one super duper awesome player. The only issue I have with VLC is that I can't go frame by frame like Photoshop or like QuickTime. Also, sometimes the end of it cuts out a little bit too quick. Even dragging this, you can see I'm not really getting a real-time update like I would in QuickTime or something else. Okay? So what you might see on yours is it may look like it doesn't actually go off screen. It may look like it just doesn't do anything. You can always right-click on these and open them with QuickTime. And then QuickTime will take another second. There we go. And then just verify that the start and the end are clear. Now you'll notice on mine at the very, very end of this, is it clear? Well, you can't see it up there. It's not clear. There's like 4 dots right there. Barely see them, right? That wouldn't be a huge deal because no one really know it because then the next piece would come up. But because we want it to be perfect, let's figure out where those 4 dots are coming from. Okay, those 4 dots do not exist in After Effects. Where are they coming from then? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this point. I'm going to hit Control A, and I'm just going to Alt right bracket to cut everything off the screen. Okay? So what that does is it chops all my layers. Probably one of my layers, for whatever reason, is just kind of hanging out a little bit, and the compressor is picking it up. That should take care of it. So now I'm just going to go back to Export, back to Media Encoder. I make sure it's on H.264, which it still is. I click on the item. I can just overwrite the last one and then hit play, and then that's it. And then I can verify, yes, that did fix it. Hopefully it did. Yep, so now it's gone. At the very end, you don't see anything out there. Okay? Now, if you wanted to add some extra fanciness to your animation, like this looks pretty kind of plain and boring, you may want to jazz it up some. You can take your composition. So this composition is called TitleCard 03. This guy is not in the right folder. Go back in there. So I'm going to grab TitleCard 03, and I'm going to drop it onto this composition here. And what that does is it takes that whole composition, makes a brand new composition, and puts it inside it. Okay? So a couple of you, I went through how to do a pre-compose where you take layers and group them together basically and put them separate. This is what that's doing. So now all of my stuff is basically flattened into one area. If I double click double 3, it jumps me right back in here. I can still edit it and tweak it and modify it. But if I want to get back to that one and do some modifications, I can go here. Now the benefit of doing this is that I can do a bunch of settings right to this top one, and then it'll affect all the layers at once without me having to worry about grabbing each layer and modifying each layer individually. Okay? So just some quick things that you can do to kind of enhance your stuff and make it look better. One of them is a vignette. Does anyone not know what a vignette is? Okay, so a vignette is basically a darkening of the edges. Okay, you've seen it in movies. If you look for it in movies, it'll really annoy you because they're kind of like overused in some movies. I'm going to duplicate that layer so I have a copy of it. So now I have 2 of them. I'm going to go to the top one and change the mode to multiply. And what that does is it instantly darkens the entire thing. What I want to do is just darken the edges. So I'm going to go over here to where we would typically create a shape. And I'm going to create a ellipse. And because I'm selected on a layer, as I drag this, it creates a mask. Okay? Now, it lines up perfectly with the circle. It doesn't need to line up perfectly with anything. Okay? It's just, I need a starting point to go from. So now that I have this, I'm going to invert it. You see the mask thing popped up. And then I'm going to open up my mask options, and I'm going to feather it. And then I'm going to expand it.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Right? And so you can see the difference between this and that. Okay? And the point of the vignette is it's supposed to be subtle. It should not be, let me take the feather off. It shouldn't be like that, like a spotlight that looks creepy. It should be like this. A subtle darkening around the edges, lightening towards the middle. Our focus gets drawn right to that lighter spot. That's what we're using it for. Okay? So that's one thing that you can do to something like this. Another thing that we can do is if I go under here and make a new solid, under Effect, go to Generate, and go to Noise and go to Add Grain. It's going to be subtle. Let me turn off. Let me change the color of this to like a gray. There we go. So now we can see it. So this is grain. So what this will do is add some grain to it. Now that may seem kind of odd, like why would you want to make it look dirtier? But sometimes adding a little bit of grain to it really enhances the feel of it, makes it look a little bit more, realistic or polished, right? The way the grain works is you get a preview region. That's what's in the center. Once I turn this to final output, it does it to the entire screen. There's nothing crazy here, so I could just do that. Sometimes it just goes too much. So I'm going to take the intensity down to maybe 0.2. I'm going to take the size, I'm going to keep the size at 1. And let's see, any animation. So it is animated, so if I were to zoom in, let me make the intensity a bit more so you can see it. Ooh, look at that. And I hit play, you'll see that it goes crazy, right? I don't want any animation on this. I want it just to be no animation, just kind of like a grainy kind of pattern to it. Okay, so I'm going to take the color down as well. I want this to be less saturated. I want my intensity to be maybe 0.2 or so. There we go. And then I'm going to take my color and actually change this to like a black, maybe a white. I want to find the one that's going to make it look most obvious. So I may need to take the intensity up some. Yep. There we go. And saturation down. Good. There we go. So I'm adjusting it for my screen, but just so you can see it. Okay, I'm keeping it very subtle. And then I would just take this and just do this as an add. Oops. Blend with original. I want to set this to screen. Okay. Nope. Let me change it back to white. Oh, sorry. Nope, I know it is. Just verifying. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. All right, so sometimes these kinds of effects, this black solid being an add, it's adding the black to it. It's not adding the black with the grain to it. Okay, so basically I need to flatten this solid. Control-Shift-C, or right-clicking and pre-composing. Call this noise. I'll say move all the attributes to the new comp and say OK. And now if I set this to add, it proved me wrong. Oh, there's nothing underneath it. That's why. Huh. So maybe that wasn't necessary. Nope, that wasn't necessary. All right, cool. So there we have some grain on it. Definitely way too much. So I can go back to my grain here, take the intensity down. Like that. That looks good. Even that. So you'll see I'll have basically this kind of like noisy-ish pattern on top of it, which gives it just a little bit more of a realistic feel, more of a tooth to it. Like a texture, right. Okay. Cool, so that's it. So those are two things you could add. You could add a vignette. You could add this grain pattern. There's other stuff eventually we'll get into. But for now, those are two simple things that you could add. Okay? So let's pretend that I'm all done with my stuffs. I'm going to make sure that in my compositions, whichever one I'm turning in as my final one has the word final in it. So if you see this one says title card final, that's nothing. So I mean, why have that one? Number 3 was the one that I turned in. Okay, so this is the one I turned in. Number 4 was the one I added those extra effects to. So let's say number 4 is going to be my final one. So I would say number 4, final. That way, when I go to grade your stuff, I know which one to look for when it's the final one. I make sure all my compositions are in the composition folder. I make sure everything is labeled inside here. It doesn't have to be a perfect label, just some sort of label besides comp 1, comp 2, comp 3. That's annoying. Save my stuffs, close it. And let's shrink this down. I'm going to take these files here, title card 2. Okay, so this is my most recent one. This one is nothing. So I'm going to delete the one that's nothing. This is just stuff from After Effects. I can delete that. I don't need any of the auto saves. I can delete that. Okay? So this is essentially everything from my folder that you need to turn in. There's nothing in artwork, which is fine. There's nothing in audio, which is fine. There's nothing in movies. It's fine. Output should have your final movie. I don't need both. I just need the one. And then reference has nothing. Okay? So I'm going to take my title card and copy it. On your computers, you have a Z drive and a Y drive. The Z drive is the one that you would write to, okay? And inside the Z drive, yes, there's a 1900 folder. There's an 8 a.m. and an 8 p.m. Which one are we? A.m., right. You find the correct folder, title card 01, and you just paste your folder in there. Okay? If you're leery about deleting stuff from your own folder, then copy that whole folder to somewhere else, delete the stuff that I don't want, and then drag that into this title card folder. You can only write to this thing one time. What I mean by that is if you were to go in here and make a new folder, and then you tried to name it, it would not let you name it. Okay? It would just say error doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. So you can't do that. So whatever you do, you make it outside of the server and then just drag it onto the server. Okay? Questions about rendering this out as a movie and then turning it in? Yes, sir.
Okay, so when you're rendering it out as a movie, when you're inside media encoder, how do you first you export it as what, and how did you play it?
All you need to do is make sure that the H.264 is set up in media encoder. You click on that blue line where it says the name, so you can put it where you want it to go.
This blue line?
Nope, the far right. That one, yep. So that tells it where to go.
So click on it?
Yep. And then once you've told it where to go and what you're naming it, then you just hit the go button. Okay, anything else? Nope. All right.